Teachers of Reddit, what are some positive trends you have noticed in today's youth? As a general rule, they are more understanding and forgiving if somebody is different. Don't get me wrong, some of them are still dicks to those kids, but it is a shrinking minority. Edit, wow, most upvoted comment of the day. Reading the comments, it seems many of you agree, that can only be a good thing. I've noticed this especially with disabled kids. My 6-year-old will say things like, but, you know, Billy just thinks a little different, but he likes running on the playground with us when Billy has pretty severe autism. When I worked in a middle school, I almost never saw kids being mean to the kids with special needs, and when there were, the other kids would check them. Dude, that's not cool. When I was in high school a decade ago, the special needs kids had our own classes, to learn at their own pace, but pair classes they were with us. We always watched out for them, and passed the basketball to them, and pretended to block them half the time. They could shoot better than us anyways, haha. Other sports like flag football, we would act like we couldn't catch them, or at least let them get first down. Same with baseball, kind lob the ball in and usually let them get on base. They were always super excited to see us, and be in gym, and would tell us all sorts of stuff. Yes, it was annoying sometimes, but we just dealt with it nicely, or told them to go tell our pet teacher what they told us, just so we could annoy the teacher, haha. A realization that any sort of specialization is a good thing, and that a 4-year college isn't necessary for everyone. Lots of my students want to go to tech/trade school or apprenticeships. They're learning from my debt-laden generation. Edit to at, Jesus people, I don't welcome my kids to class every day and tell them that college is for chumps and to become an electrician. If a student tells me their goals, and they can be well achieved through trade or vocational school, I encourage that. If a student tells me their goals, and they need to go to university, then I encourage that. I have noticed that this can go the other way too. A few younger people I've met are adamantly against any kind of schooling, because they think it's all a scam. Something about anyone can be a millionaire. This could also be a commonality between all of the generations, though. There was always a segment of high schoolers who thought that. Kindness. My college students are kind and supportive to one another most of the time. Haha, my teacher was always weirded out when my friends and I made study documents and shared them with each other and anyone who asked. If they were doing the same question, they were invited. Teacher was always, you know, you're all competing against each other, right? Edit, fellas, you're all getting a bit too angry about this, so let me clear some things up. I go to school in Australia, so it's going to be different. The teacher who said this was joking, a concept which seems to be lost on many. He's not reprimanding us for helping, just amused by the thought that the threat of being ranked isn't stopping us from sharing cheat sheets. No one, not the teachers nor the students, enjoys the ranked system or the fact that we get marked on a curve. I teach on the college level. From what I can tell, many of them seem more open to having a variety of kind of friends. Where I teach has a big hookup and party culture, but they seem to have genuine cross-gender friendships despite that, and in my opinion, that's been good for them. Edit, I feel like I should specify, since this comment blew up, that this is dependent on who's available to you in terms of variety. For example, I went to a very racially diverse undergrad, and had all kinds of friends. My students go to a very white college, and do not have racial diversity in their friendships as a result, but I think a fair amount that is structural. I also feel kind of like the bad guy here, but it's interesting that men in fraternities came up, because a lot of times they are the exception with my students. They'll really only hang out with their brothers, and depending on the fraternity, can be really awful to women. I was pleasantly surprised to go to college and find myself befriending people I never would have imagined befriending. Relationships that started as we have nothing in common, and I don't think I'll like you, have turned into I look forward to sitting next to you, and working with you in class. The majority of my students are in the 18 to 22 age range. I'm 37, for reference. Students are far kinder than they ever were when I was a student. They go out of their way to help each other, and they are much less judgmental than my cohort was. For the most part, they are really polite and respectful. I know a lot of professors deal with problems from cell phones, but I find that, if I tell them to use their phones respectfully and only for class purposes, they do. The only real problem I seem to have with this cohort is the constant headphone wearing, but I think that's a battle I'm just going to lose. Edit. Wow, my inbox. Thank you all for responding about how headphones help you in class. For what it's worth, I allow students who need them to use them, provided they are registered with disability services. I also allow them in lab classes. It just gets really frustrating in lectures for me to have to repeat instructions, because students couldn't hear over their headphones, or when someone is too busy rocking out to listen to the lecture. I'm going to have to think of some strategies to help those students who need them, while still making sure they're not being disruptive or missing important stuff. Edit the second. I'm truly, deeply sorry for my spelling error. I'm leaving my very small mistake up as a badge of shame. As a 36-year-old high school teacher, I couldn't agree more, especially about the constant headphone wearing. Kids are really, truly kinder than I ever could have imagined when I was in high school. They are just generally far more accepting than myself and my peers ever were. It gives me a lot of hope. The 8-year-olds I teach really make a huge deal about plastic. We watched the Blue Planet 2 episode with them, and since then they have been so mindful and really want to protect the oceans. As an environmental engineer, I can tell you that awareness is the single most powerful tool to give us a chance of a future. Keep doing your crucial job, mate. Sounds like a cool job. What is it that you do, if I may ask? Right now I work on the Environment Department of Municipality here in Chile. We are working on the land planning and some national certifications that the municipality is currently working on, so I have to check water efficiency, energy efficiency, waste management, environmental education on the public schools, you name it. It's very interesting, because I need to see all of the many things the municipality does, not only plants and garbage. The first things that people imagine when protecting the environment comes to mind. Last year, when I was in my last year of uni, we won this project to work on a wetland a little to the north. The idea was to empower the people living there, not with our academia knowledge and telling them why wetlands are important, but telling them that their backyard is important and part of them, so they have to show us, the rest of the country, what can they do. So yeah. It is cool. B == edit. Shit. I posted this 2 weeks ago like yeah, we do this and that, not a big deal. Cool, but not a big deal, and the response has been more than overwhelming. My first silver and gold. Wow. Thanks, everyone. I'm glad we are more and more people trying to do something here. For those of you who are in school still, we are trying our best to give you people a fighting chance when your turn arrives. Not a teacher, but I've noticed that a lot of children seem to be questioning authority rather than flat out rebelling. I wonder if that's actually any different, or if we as the adult generation are now more accepting of questions, so we treat kids with more respect and actually answer questions. So instead of calling it rebellion, we call it curiosity? Edit. Wow, thanks for the gold. Never gotten that before, D. Very interesting take this. We all know our parents grew up in super strict schools. I guess we've edged to a more positive place. Lol, my dad told me a story about how this dude he went to high school with got hogtied and thrown into a bin full of wood chips during shop class. Anecdotal, but from all his stories it sounds like they got away with way more shit. As someone who is a youth of today, I've literally never seen bullying where I live. People are kind of dicks sometimes but not bullies. I can agree. As I got older I noticed that kids don't bully as much. They just leave the people they don't like alone. When I was in high I didn't notice any bullying. All my issues had to do with me willingly being around the wrong people. Edit. I'm not saying bullying doesn't exist anymore, I'm just saying that it's decreasing. I was bullied until high school, so I know what the different forms of bullying can be like. I was excluded and made fun of. When I got to high school, people just left people like me and others alone. They just leave the people they don't like alone. Fucking brilliant strategy. They really get each other. As much as they diss on each other, joke around, and yes, get to the point of blows, they can usually put issues aside. Sometimes to a fault, but overall they are pretty understanding of each other. Comment from a senior in high school: this is the most accurate answer here. We are complete dicks to our friends and nice to strangers. But you're always a nice dick to friends. I don't get how it works, I just know it does. It's about knowing what to, and not to joke about emo. If my friend's got a personal problem, you better believe I'm calling people out when people bring stuff up as a joke, so long as it doesn't embarrass them. Otherwise anything is fair game, just check every once and a while if it's okay with them to joke about. I'm a teacher at a high school in Missouri. All of the stereotypes you hear/see in rural high schools are still prevalent. However, almost every group works harder academically. It is no longer cool to get Fs and fail. Even country boys who will never leave the farm or go to college care about getting passing grade 600 plus students in our HSBTW. It doesn't really surprise me about the country boys. Contrary to popular belief, farmers in the US actually have to be knowledgeable in several fields. Now, the older generation knows this and encourages their kids in school when their own parents didn't see the use of it. Can confirm this was my experience growing up on a field. We had to know math, and we had applied learning. Fractions were quickly learned as it meant we knew how to mix dilutes in solids to make solutions. Oh, we also knew our chemistry. Had to, because we had to know how to read the pH report and soil analysis of our fields. If we didn't, it meant we didn't know how much nitrogen or other chemicals were needed in what fields. So in the long term, I did great with math and science due to my dad and mom knowing such things. I did quite miserably in English as sentence structure meant so little to me. Oh well. You might have done poorly in English class, but honestly your comment reads just fine to me. Kids are openly kind and loving regarding their parents. I had a tough football player day in class once. I love my mom, she's my best friend. I see the old ugh my parents suuuak mentality falling by the wayside recently. Yes. My 15-year-old daughter blew me a kiss and waved when I dropped her off for school today. I remembered when my mom dropped me off at school as a teen, and if she told me she loved me after I opened the door, I wouldn't say it back. I thought about that when my daughter did that and wondered if it's just because she loves me so much, or was I really that embarrassed to love my mom? Lol. My 16-year-old son lives with my ex quite a drive away and up in the mountains. Between school activities and winter weather, I only see him on the occasional weekend and holidays. He's also on the football team and had a game that was only a couple hours away, so I made it a point to go. By the time I arrived, he was already on the sidelines, but we made eye contact and I gave him a low-key wave. I didn't want to embarrass him. He immediately yelled hello and came sprinting over to give me a big hug. I was so surprised, but it felt pretty awesome. For some reason this made me cry. Spouse to a high school teacher, she had to say, they were born into the internet and social media. It is not something they had to learn. Also as a result of which, they are also more self-reliant with research. And most importantly, contrary to the largest complaints, today's kids are extremely hardworking and are less judgy of nerds, less judgmental in general. My little sister, who is just 25, is a high school teacher and she says that being the smart, well-rounded kid is a cool thing. Being the asshole slacker isn't cool at all. I wonder if it's cyclical. We had enough slackers from the 80s and 90s that we can all see how lame it is. By now, everyone knows potential doesn't mean shit if you don't put in the work.